Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Now, good to be with you again, Mark, as we continue our coaching journey, and good to celebrate the progress you've been making in so many areas. What would you like to make sure we focus on today?
um, Now, here's the problem. I had one thing in mind, and then I thought of something else in the middle of our discussion a moment ago,
Okay.
and now I can't remember either one of them. Uh,
Let's see if we can pause for a moment and see if they come back.
yeah, they were related. I can remember it now. This is as I was mentioning. We're kind of we've entered that rubber meets the road kind of
Mm-hmm.
situation. We've done the assessments. We know where we've generally laid out a strategy and a plan, and it's now time to make some adjustments to our thinking and our doing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and So the thing I'm struggling with is how to get people who are accustomed to not changing
Mm-hmm.
uh, to make some kind of a change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so how to get my team to move from just point A to point B,
Mm-hmm.
even if we need to go all the way to Z. But how do I help them make that first step?
Okay. Even if it's point A to point B, see some
Yeah.
forward progress. Okay. What's important to you about that? Why we would work on that together?
Well, it's important because otherwise all the stuff we've been doing is going to be wasted time and energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I actually hate to think of it this way, but I've invested 25 years of my life here
Mm-hmm.
uh, with a passion to see the church make changes and become effective at ministering and being missionaries to our community.
Mm-hmm.
And we've really been focusing on that for the last about 5 years, 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's time to really do things. And if we don't do them, then I've wasted 25 years of my life,
Mm.
and that'll be very frustrating,
Yeah.
disappointing to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just that sense of I've wasted spent hard lots of time I've really worked hard on.
Right.
Yeah. When, as we work on this goal and it comes to reality, what is it going to look like of getting your people able to move forward?
Um, it's going to look like there's progress in more than a handful.
Mm-hmm.
There are some who are changing now, and made they're just, but we're kind of, I think we're maybe at the 10% are changing right now, which is enough
Mm-hmm.
eventually to make a difference. I'm aware of that, but somewhere along the line, I'd like to see it move to like 15-20% of the people
Mm-hmm.
um, who are making some adjustments to their, not only their thinking, but their own actions in their personal
Mm-hmm.
lives.
What? How would you know that those changes are happening? What would be the way you you would be able to evaluate that?
Um, well, one would be the stories they tell. Uh, yeah, I have a guy in my church is telling stories now about his friend, his mechanic that he's been working with, and uh, and then he started. He found a record shop downtown that sells the old vinyl records and the needles or stereos, and they've got a guy in there that can actually repair old phonographs. And he started to build a relationship with 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 the with the record guy. Doesn't even know his name yet, but he's had broached a conversation about some old time Jesus people music, and the guy's heard of the musicians, and so they have some common ground there. Um, that's the kind of thing that I'm wanting all of us to be experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Intentionally going, hey, there's somebody that maybe I can develop a relationship with, and um, so I'll know that it's happening when I start hearing more stories like that.
Okay. Um, you said I think I there are those who are changing. That's something to stop and be encouraged about. But I want to see more. So when you think about where you've gone since you've been working on this game plan journey, where did you start? You say we're at about 10%. So how would you evaluate the progress you've already made?
Um, well, I think we've made huge progress. A lot of in terms of getting information out there and people thinking in different ways. Um, we've come a long way toward tearing down the maintenance ministry maintenance mindset that was here.
Mm-hmm.
We've begun to see, there are people who are really aware that we need to be about making disciples,
Mm-hmm.
which doesn't mean doing what we've always done,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that that's how. So that's been a big difference, and it's the big that's been a big part of the progress. Um,
What would be an example of that? Notice how you've noticed that.
um, the things people have again, it's the stories they tell, and
Mm-hmm.
and the reactions they're having. There are people who I thought would never try anything new, who are actually doing things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Our late a couple in their 70s that are joining with for the second year in a row, are joining with the missionary church down the street to do a vacation Bible school in an apartment complex uh, that's not far from either one of our church buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a couple who are considering, another couple in their 60s that are talking about joining them to do this. And this is really out of their comfort zone. We've not had a vacation Bible school at this church for 20 years
Mm.
because people didn't want to people didn't volunteer to be involved. When I came, they had vacation Bible school only because they hired somebody to come in and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And they had her like 3-4 years in a row. And then she quit she quit that ministry. And so the next year, well, are we going to do VBS? And no, nobody wants to do it because, but now we have people who are starting to do that. The ladies who moved their Bible study off campus to the Crisis Pregnancy Center.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're starting to see that shift from thinking it's just getting people to come here and to support our ministries and our programs. I just want to see it continue. I want to see the momentum of that increase. and not stall out
Mm-hmm.
because people have decided they just aren't ready to make another step.
Okay. As you're making that shift from church focused, come to us, to others focused, we'll go to them. That's huge. So think again, the number of people and what you've seen in terms of the difference that the things you've been working with them about has meant. So up to this point, as a way of um, paying attention to what's been working well, that we can carry forward for the next 10% or whatever percent.
Um, it's actually been, as far as I can tell, what's done is there. I've done some vision casting
Mm-hmm.
along these lines, and there have been people who have grasped the vision of moving, you know, out into the community as opposed to expecting everybody to come here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this idea of working with another church,
Mm-hmm.
um, I presented it to them. As soon as the pastor contacted me and said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this kind of a multiple church thing." I think last year there were 3 churches involved in doing the Vacation Bible School. I'm not sure. I know that we are this year in the missionary church. I don't know if the 3rd church is there or not.
Mm-hmm.
Again, but so that I just presented the option to people and they grabbed it. I didn't make a really hard sell kind of a presentation on any of this. It's just been a matter of saying, this is, you know, this is one of the things we need to do. If we're going to reach people in our community, we need to be in our community. And so we have, there just been people who grabbed a hold of that and done it. So it's almost as if I'm not quite sure how to say this is what works because um, there's no set formula. I'm not quite sure what motivated some of them to do what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because, like I said, they've been the last ones I would have expected to some of them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
They've been those who have been part of the maintenance mindset, um, and yet now they're considering or doing things that we've never done that before,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, if I
that's
was
part of the reason I need coaching on this.
if we were to look at what you've just been saying there's no magic formula, but there certainly have been some things that you've been doing that have been bearing fruit. So I don't necessarily have them in order, but you've cast vision to help people see the needs of the people in your community. You've been very intentional about equipping them, getting them to think in new ways, seeing with new eyes. You have been both telling stories, but also inviting stories. You have been, this was a really, really neat one. You've been giving them options. That's simple but powerful. Here's some ways you can do it, and you've not forced them, but you allow them to choose, and some are choosing. That's pretty exciting. So there are some key things you have been doing that has been making a difference with your people. So what would you, building on those key things, what options do you have to to involve that next level of people. You got your 10%. So what does that look like numbers wise?
Well, that's average attendance, including kids on Sunday morning, is between 55 and 60.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking 5 to 6 people.
Mm-hmm. How big is the next level team that you developed and
Yeah,
equipped?
the next level team is 5 people plus me. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Okay, and then out of the next level group, which was the next ring out of people, what
yeah, that
progress have you seen with them that we can build on?
I have seen some there have been some people that one couple that really reached out to next door neighbor as he was going through some end of life things, and reached out to his wife, uh, and even since he passed away, they've been reaching out to them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he he was very unresponsive in terms of he didn't want anything to do with God or anything at
Mm-hmm.
all. And he just told them out point blank, but he didn't mind them being his friends. So that's what they did. Um, and but I haven't heard anything about that or anything like similar to that from them for about 6-7 months now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's it's a I get the the sense from conversations with folks that they may have a grasp of the concept. They may understand the concepts of building bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're but the sacrifice involved in changing that behavior so that I can start building the bridges.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that there's a reluctance to go there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've been telling some wonderful stories of people that have been getting it and doing that. How have you been celebrating with the storytellers?
That's a good question.
Okay.
Um, I have at a couple of times. I have not been consistent about this. It's just that, but there are times when people tell the story of like working with the mechanic. When my friend, the mechanic's name is Dennis. As soon as I know so much about Dennis. I've never met Dennis.
Uh-huh.
If Dennis shows up, I'm going to be having a hard time. Oh, you're George's friend, and you're doing, going to have a hard time not acting like I know all his deep, dark secrets.
Uh-huh.
I don't, but I don't want to spook him out when I do meet him. But I have on occasion said, this is the kind of thing we're talking about. And when the couple was reaching out to their neighbors, the husband was passing away, I did do that. This is the kind of thing that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done that, and I have been. I would like this. I failed to do it last year. I want to make sure we do it this year before this Vacation Bible School happens. I want to kind of have lack of a better term, a commissioning service for the people that are going to be working in it from our church. You know, bring them forward and pray for them as a congregation. Um, so there's that for celebration. But yeah, that's something I need to be more intentional about.
Okay. Well, two things you said: celebrate with the storytellers, notice what they're doing, and highlight their stories for the rest of the church. Encourage them to keep telling stories, which then, of course, helps foster the culture of we see God at work around us, in us, and through us. And then the idea of commissioning those that go out to serve, whatever that is, make a big deal of that. That's a great option. Wonderful. This has just been back here, so we'll ask it and see what might come of it. It's easy to celebrate the extroverts because they easily have stories to tell. How can you encourage and celebrate your introverts that don't do that easily?
One is to figure out a way to get them to open up and tell me their stories.
What would you ask them? That might allow that to happen.
That's a good question. How would I ask them? So I'm the one couple that I mentioned was ministered to their neighbors. They're not extremely outgoing people, but they're not real introverted either. They'd be kind of middle of the road.
We both know that introverts by nature are not direct communicators. They're more indirect. So not as verbal, they communicate, find it easier to communicate other ways. So what are some ways you can invite them to communicate that doesn't include them having to be very verbal?
I could put a question on our communication card. They could jot down a short story that way. That's a possibility.
That's great.
Or encourage them to send me an email or a text, something along those lines. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Even though I'm half-time introvert, I sometimes don't understand how to get introverts to do stuff. Because what I usually do is not introverted. So.
You're an introvert that can get up in front of other people, but most introverts are scared to death about having to get up and verbally share in front of people. So if you could help address that fear for them, what might happen?
I first of all have to convince them that I really am half introverted. Uh, I've mentioned that to people a few times recently, and I don't believe it. Um, okay. Um, you don't see me go home and curl up in a ball and hide from people for an hour or two to recuperate from being in front of all of you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we can do some indirect stuff with that. Of course, in doing that, I might have to ask for permission to share some things, but that shouldn't be too hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I would need to work on a way to craft the questions so that on the communication card so that it works.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking in particular about the guy on my next level team when I asked, what can I do to help you invite people? And his response was find a different way to get people to come besides inviting them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good example.
Yeah. How do I help him tell me a story about sometime when he's actually invited somebody, or you know, uh, was reaching out. So I think that question's going to take some crafting time.
Mm-hmm. What other options do you have besides just the card at church to give them opportunity to write something down?
Um, emails and texts,
Mm-hmm.
another possibility. We could probably, it could make those emails. I could initiate those if I get a good question put together.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
to initiate that. Um, it seems to me, as I'm thinking about it, Tim, that the part of this is also um, getting a grasp for for the Lord's compassion and His love for people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so one of the questions might be something along the lines of how have you been seeing this or sensing that the Spirit has been increasing your love for people, your concern for people.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the people are very concerned about kids and grandkids, which is very understandable. Um, and I learned from somebody a long time ago that once people start asking the question, what do I have to do to reach my kids and my grandkids? They're just a hair's breadth from being able to answer the question, what do I have to do to reach other people?
That's good. Great insight. Great insight.
So, yeah.
Um, may I
Need to.
suggest a thought and invite you to use it as a springboard? The thought, we're kind of talking about introverts here, but the thought that from Saint Francis of Assisi, we know his famous line, preach the gospel all the time, if necessary, use words. So what are some ways that you could help your people share how they're preaching the gospel, even when they're not using words? Since people seem to be so afraid of the words part.
Well, and a part of that is that they're thinking the words are a presentation of four spiritual laws or something. You got to get out of canned speech, which I have repeatedly pointed out is not what we're talking about. I've encouraged them to think about and to work out their own story. what was I like before Jesus? What has he done? How, how did I come to him, and how has he changed my life? That kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um, but yeah, I'm going to figure out a way to encourage people to report how they've done things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. It seems that so many people have figured that if they're not saying something, somehow they're not doing ministry to people. When people with serving gifts, they're very powerful when they do that. So
Hmm.
if we affirm that, invite them to tell what they did and to serve as a way of showing the love of Jesus, it lets them know that they're valuable in the whole process too. So
Yeah.
you have talked about creating easy crafting questions they can easily respond to on the communication card, inviting them to write down thoughts and stories, ask them to send emails and texts, allow indirect communications as a means of storytelling, keep inviting people to give us his love for people. Love that statement. If you get them to ask, how can we reach my kids or grandkids? We're not far from them asking how they can reach other people. Affirm you can preach the gospel without using words, and invite them to that. Those are great ideas. What else comes to mind as options that will help people see they already are involved or become more involved?
Well, one of the things that it has occurred to me, and I think I'm going to go ahead and say it so that I don't forget it,
Mm-hmm.
is that one one of the reasons I've been struggling with this is because there's that part of me that wants to just get with it,
Uh-huh.
which is a little over the top for introverts. I'm glad we brought up you brought up this idea that how do we communicate this with the indirect uh, and introverted people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that I don't respond well to being told to do stuff either. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I guilting people is the last thing on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, um, just being able to think of this from a different perspective has helped a lot. Um, there's some things I know I don't want to do. I don't want to try to, I don't want to ask questions, which indicate that I think that they're failing at. I could because I want to ask questions that are going to actually encourage them to say, "Hey, the Lord's actually doing something through me."
Mm-hmm.
I not a couple of years ago when we started talking about this in more depth about uh, just trying to be kind to the people that serve us at the restaurants and make sure we give them a good tip and just try to converse with them like they're real people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even the most introverted guy, the one that doesn't want to use personal invitations, he found that very freeing because he really is a nice guy. He doesn't he doesn't treat people badly, and he's going, you mean that's like, yeah, that's sharing Jesus' love in a very practical way. Um, so there's that was very freeing for him and his wife at that point. So I again want to do that kind of thing. I want to set them free. I don't want them to be sensing condemnation or guilt
Yeah.
and shame.
Yeah.
Um, it should be fun,
Amen.
for lack
Hmm.
um,
Okay. Amen.
it was, and that's a stronghold that's got to come down, a mental block that's got to come down. That idea that evangelism is scary and confrontational and uh, anything but joyous and fun.
Hmm. So
So
great options. Great options. Um, any other options, or would you like to translate some action steps?
I think that we should go to action steps.
Okay.
Uh,
What would
so,
you like to do?
um, well, I would like to. I will craft a question, or maybe even a series of questions to maybe have a different question on the communication card each week for a few weeks. Um, Knowing full well I don't hit the same people every week,
Hmm.
uh, and also that the same question, one question may not hit connect, but another one will
Hmm.
with this somebody. So
Hmm.
I'm going to craft a series of questions to put on the communication cards. Um, I think we'll probably start that for Sunday the 13th, Mother's Day. It's a good thing.
Hmm.
I could probably spin the Mother's Day question a little bit.
Hmm.
Mother's Day situation.
Hmm.
Um,
And what will be the purpose of those questions?
uh, the questions are, to try to pull out uh, people's stories of ways that they've been sharing Jesus' love in a concrete way.
Hmm.
Um, Perhaps even going out of their comfort zone a little bit to do so. Um, for two reasons. One is to help them see that the Lord really is using them already,
Hmm.
and also for opportunity to kind of fuel the flame and keep things
Hmm.
uh, going.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, maintain to increase the momentum of the progress uh,
Hmm.
we've had so far.
Okay, so that by the 13th, we'll have some
Yeah.
questions ready to go for the communication cards. Great. What else would you like to do?
Um, well, on the I on Sunday the 20th, or I want to skip the 27th because that's Memorial Day weekend. Um, so either the 20th or the first Sunday in June.
Hmm.
That would be the third, I think.
Hmm.
Um, have that commissioning service for the VBS workers to
Hmm.
celebrate what they're doing.
Hmm.
Uh, um, I want to put another one down for the end of August.
Hmm.
Um, the commissioning for the ladies, for the moms Bible study group, the
Okay.
moms that are going over to the pregnancy center.
Hmm.
Um, either the end of either the end of August or the beginning of September.
Okay.
Um, I'll go ahead and plan that out there that far.
What was the place again? The women's?
It's the Mom's Bible Study,
Yep.
and they go to the Crisis Pregnancy Center.
Okay. Crisis. Uh, okay. When, so as you commission them, that you're making a big deal sending them out, how do you want to create space for them to come back and tell what they experienced with the church?
Um, that's a good question.
Hmm.
VBS, um, we can. Sunday following the VBS, because the VBS is going to wind up on Thursday evening, if I remember the schedule correctly. So the Sunday after they finish VBS, we might be able to have a quick little report from them.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay.
Yeah, that would be good.
Mm-hmm. And in keeping with honoring their introverts, some of them might have to write it down rather than say it from up front.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Good. What else do you want to choose to do?
I'm going to be honest and tell you I can't remember anything else that I said. And I don't know if that's because nothing else was sticking or if I'm forgetting a really good one.
Okay. Well, we can review what your options
that'd be
are.
good. Thank you.
Celebrate with the storytellers.
Okay.
Notice what they're doing. Foster a culture of seeing God at work in and through us. Number 2, commission those who go out to serve. Make a big deal of them. Invite them to report what they've experienced. 3, find ways to celebrate and encourage the introverts, which included crafting questions, inviting them to write things down, emails, texts, to tell their stories. Number 4, keep inviting people to give us his love for people. Find ways to grow love for others. And you said if we can get them concerned about their family, it's a short step to concerned about others. Listening to St. Francis, we ask introverts how they're sharing the gospel without words with their serving and supporting gifts. Number 6, some things you don't want to do is to try and tell people what to do or force them, give them the idea they're failing. I want to be affirming and encouraging. Find ways to set them free to serve as God made them. It should be fun. Evangelism is not scary. It should be fun. Yeah. So those are some of the things good options that you had generated.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to be weaving those concepts into that whole idea of crafting the questions and first the celebration of the ministries that are going out there for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. That right there is good.
Okay.
It seems to me that's a good way to work on the culture, change the atmosphere.
So if like the number 1 action step is to continue creating the culture of God at work, especially through stories.
Right.
Then you will, and then you had those 3 other action steps: crafting questions, getting the introverts involved, commissioning people to go out serve and having them celebrate when they come back, reports, things like that. Great. Anything else you want to add?
No, except for thanks for the prod there with the introverts.
Okay. So that was one of what was helpful today question. That was one of the helpful things.
Yes, that and just talking about and reminding myself of things, in response to the questions that what the Lord is already doing, the changes that are already happening. Like I said, when you're tired, it's not always easy to be positive. Yeah, so that's true about me too.
Yeah,
but
you brought up the idea about the introverts by telling the story of that one guy. So
yeah, I did.
That was your idea, but we did dig around it in a while, so that was great. Good. Okay, well let's look at our calendars. We'll look at our next call.
Okay.